On December 15, 1791, the founding fathers of the colonies, Thomas Jefferson, George Mason, Ben Franklin, and many more important men stood up for the right to bear arms. Thomas Jefferson once said, "The strongest reason for the people to retain the right to keep and bear arms is, as a last resort, to protect themselves against tyranny and government." In December, the founding fathers adopted the Second Amendment to the Constitution. This gave citizens the right to own firearms, but the responsibility to use and defend themselves when needed in a responsible manner. Prior to the Second Amendment, the Chinese invented the most dominant weapon. They had no idea how much responsibility would come with creating this weapon. Also, having no idea how much damage and destruction this would cause in society. They did this by making gunpowder, back then called black powder. The Chinese would fill little rockets, called alka rockets, with this powder. By creating this weapon, it would take lives, not just then, but millions over the years. Another prior event was in the 1700s, when Native Americans attacked the colonists, killing men and women. The Native Americans would take the colonists' supplies and their livestock. The colonists deeply invested themselves to the Second Amendment to protect themselves and their property from the Native American attacks. In the same time period, the British took everything they wanted and killed people that seemed suspicious. This led up to the Quartering Act. Also, the Revolutionary War was a huge factor to the Second Amendment and was one of the reasons of the Second Amendment being written.
In the year 1791, when the amendment was being put in place, many people supported it for their right to own a firearm. The biggest supporters were actually the ones to write the amendment, the Founding Fathers. Federalists also made a difference towards the amendment. These men and women are members of a major political party in the early years of the U.S. These men and women did many important things, such as separate the powers into 3 independent branches and protected the rights of the people.
The state Virginia also helped the amendment. They spread the word of the amendment's ability to let the colonists have the right to bear arms in newspapers and many more public locations.
The Second Amendment seemed so great, but it did have opposers. Some of the people living in the colonies did not all agree with this law. The people who did not agree were called Anti-Federalists.
Anti-Federalists are the type of people who did not want to ratify the Constitution. In fact, they argued that it gave too much power to the national government at the expense of the state government and thought that the Congress wielded too much power.
Politics were some of the biggest opposers of the amendment. They voted for gun control as much as they could and have throughout time. They felt that people don't need the right and don't have the responsibility. They felt the amendment was putting too much power in the hands of the citizens. The Second Amendment had social impacts that have affected America. According to the National Crime Victimization Survey, 467,321 people were victims of crimes committed with a firearm in 2011. That same year, data collected by the FBI showed that firearms were used in 68% of murders, 41% of robbery offenses, and 21% of aggravated assaults nationwide.
One drastic social impact of the Second Amendment was in 1963, in November, the assassination of John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy was the 35th President of the United States of America and was assassinated on November 22nd in Dallas, Texas, by this man, Lee Oswald. Some say if the gun laws would have been more strict, that his death would have never happened, and America would have never have faced this drastic event.
Political impacts are one after another. After recent events, the gun laws have changed severely nationwide. In New York, certain firearms have been reclassified as assault weapons, and the owners must register them. These new laws are coming from the Sandy Hook shooting as a repercussion to ensure everyone's safety. On the national level, Senate Democrats failed in their bid to pass new gun control measures, something that the government has failed on its part to make gun laws and the responsibilities to enforce in the nation. The right to bear arms has extensive economic impacts. Smith & Wesson Holding Corporation, one of the nation's foremost gun manufacturers, has more than doubled its earnings in the past few months.
The Second Amendment has its culture impacts as well. With the Second Amendment, we also have the consequences and the losses. In 1993, when the number of murders in Canada reached an all-time high of 630, the United States experienced 24,526 murders. While being able to freely have a gun also comes with the consequences of more deaths per year. So, where do you stand? Do you believe with Thomas Jefferson that the strongest reason for the people to retain the right to keep and bear arms is as a last resort, but we do have the right?
Or do you believe in the gun control to keep these dangerous weapons out of the hands of the people?
So, where do you stand?